Hello friends, this is David Paulides with Beyond Unknown, and welcome back to our ongoing investigation into the unexplained. We are delving deep into the cases that defy the neat explanations of conventional law enforcement, the places where the known world seems to peel away and the human presence simply vanishes. In this episode, we bring you Volume 21 of our National Park Mysteries series, 10 more disappearances that leave behind a chilling, frustrating lack of evidence. These are the cases where the trail simply stops, as if the missing person stepped not onto loose terrain, but into an invisible wall, or perhaps even an invisible doorway. My research has spent decades tracking this specific pattern of vanishing cases where trained searchers can find no physical trace of the victim despite intense effort. It has led me to one terrifying possibility: the occasional brief opening of dimensional rifts in remote or heavily wooded areas, acting as strange, silent cosmic traps. The core mystery isn't why they disappeared, but how they disappeared so completely without leaving a single clue that points to a human outcome, whether benign or tragic. Join me now as we take a walk into the woods, into the mountains, and into the terrifying unknown. We begin at number 10 with the vanishing of Michael William Don, 47, of Las Vegas, Nevada. A man who, in 2009, was struggling with depression and a need for clarity. On January 28, 2009, Michael left home after an argument. His girlfriend assumed he was driving to clear his head, a common human response to stress, but he never returned. His last confirmed activity was an attempted call to his girlfriend shortly after he left the house. A call that never connected, which means he was still using his phone, still in our world. The key to his disappearance is the discovery of his vehicle. A park ranger found his car the next day, abandoned 40 miles off Interstate 95, deep inside the desolate Desert National Wildlife Range. The ranger observed footprints leading away from the vehicle, just footprints. No sign of a struggle, no indication of foul play, but the trail simply ended. When a man walks away from his car deep in the Mojave Desert and the ground simply refuses to hold his track beyond the first few steps, you have to ask where the logic breaks down. The desert is an immense, yet deceptively simple place for tracking. Did he wander into an ancient, high-energy location, a temporary shift in the landscape that simply absorbed him? The lack of any traditional search report is the first signal of the anomaly we track. Our next case is a study in conflicting clues. One 8-year-old Lee Cutler from Illinois vanished in October 2007 from a remote area of Wisconsin. Lee was fighting depression, and his actions right before he disappeared, leaving home abruptly, failing to show up for work, initially suggested a self-initiated departure. His car, a Toyota Corolla, was found abandoned and locked near the Baraboo River in Wisconsin. A receipt from the nearby Kettle Moraine State Forest was inside, pointing searchers toward the woods. The search located his overnight bag near the river. Inside were his ID, cash, and keys, the very things you need to survive, as well as the book Into the Wild and heartbreaking notes to his family. The notes suggested a finality. My head is too big for my shoulders. Finally, I'll be able to sleep. But despite the river location and the urgency of the notes, no body was ever recovered. Not a bone, not a fiber. The notes suggest an inner turmoil and a desire for finality. But the choice of location for this escape is highly suspicious. A remote wilderness area known for its unpredictable waters and dense forests. He left the bag containing vital supplies, cash, keys, ID near the river. This is not the action of someone planning a long-term self-initiated departure, nor does it conclusively point to a single tragic decision. The search was intense, spanning days and utilizing dive teams in the Baraboo River. Yet, the river and the surrounding land yielded absolutely nothing. No physical evidence of Lee's fate. Could a young man, in a deeply vulnerable state, have inadvertently wandered into a place of strange energetic anomaly? a temporary dimensional rift that offered a final, silent, irreversible form of escape. The clues are conflicting, and that, friends, is a hallmark of this phenomenon. We turn now to one of the most classic, perplexing cases in our files: the disappearance of 2 0-year-old Celeste Hensley Grub in the Bighorn Mountains of Wyoming. On August 10th, 1976, Celeste was hiking with 2 friends in the Cloud Peak Wilderness, an immense, rugged, and isolated area. The arrangement was simple and brief. Celeste decided to rest at a specific spot on the trail while her friends completed a short section of the ascent. They agreed to meet her there at 5 p.m. When the friends returned, the designated spot was empty. Celeste was gone. This is the ultimate caught in the blink of an eye vanishing, measured in mere minutes of separation. She had virtually no supplies with her, only a few sweets, making prolonged survival or travel in the high-altitude wilderness highly improbable. A search of unprecedented scale for the area was launched, involving up to 300 people who scoured 80 square miles of the wilderness, finding zero trace. There was no evidence of a slip, no sign of a struggle, no tracks leading off the trail. The woman was resting, and then the air where she sat became empty. A young woman resting on a known trail vanishes between the ascent and descent of her hiking partners. Did a fleeting, localized rift open directly on the trail only to snap shut moments later, leaving nothing but 2 bewildered friends and a massive search area? The disappearance of Delia Annette Y, 24, in 2017 presents a different type of anomaly, one steeped in confusion and the abandoning of identity. Delia was last seen near the King's Dominion Camp Wilderness Campground in Dawswell, Virginia, and her actions immediately prior were profoundly erratic. She abandoned her perfectly functional silver Ford Explorer at the campground after being refused a spot, then left on foot, leaving the vehicle and subsequently all her documentation behind. Witnesses later saw her walking barefoot along a nearby road, her behavior described as worried and disturbed. Yet she refused help from passers-by. Here is the pivotal disconnect. Her phone, purse, wallet, and license were later found scattered behind the nearby Meadow Event Park. All means of identification and communication discarded. Scent dogs tracked her to a home in Caroline, Virginia. Then a friend reported seeing her days later on a street in Richmond, Virginia. 3 distinct, disconnected locations. The erratic behavior and the complete abandonment of identification suggest a severe state of disorientation. Possibly a psychological break, yes, but also possibly a physiological response to a powerful, energetic event. What if the area near the campground acted as a stress point, and she was disoriented by a near miss with a localized dimensional rift? The resulting confusion could have caused her to shed her identity, only to be pulled away completely before she could regain her senses. The clues point everywhere, and therefore nowhere useful. The vanishing of Leonard Taku, the 4-year-old schoolteacher from England, presents a bizarre juxtaposition: the serenity of the wilderness against the cold calculation of identity theft. Leonard was last seen renewing his rental car contract in Tampa. He was excited about his vacation, planning to return to his job and his life soon. His car, a black Chrysler Crossfire, was later found, months later, abandoned deep in the Ocala National Forest, specifically near the Little Lake George Wilderness area. The forest is known for its strange energy, and the discovery was immediately compromised. A controlled burn had scorched the area, destroying any physical evidence around the vehicle. The car itself was clean, no signs of a struggle. But the trail was only just beginning to get murky, because financial activity continued after the abandonment. Credit card purchases were made, and his emails were accessed, transactions that his family firmly believes were not Leonard, culminating in a room being purchased at a fancy Orlando hotel. So, Did a rift open near that remote spot in the Ocala National Forest, removing Leonard? And did someone or something then pick up his abandoned identity, his keys, his wallet, his cards to continue his transactions in our world? It suggests an almost predatory opportunism linked to the disappearance, an entity using the resources of the person who just ceased to exist. A chilling, calculated cover-up by an unknown party. Next, we examine the sheer simplicity of the disappearance of Ronald Tomlinson, 40, in the Ansel Adams Wilderness area in September 1989. Ronald was hiking with 3 companions. The terrain was difficult, and he became separated from the group around 4:30 p.m. A moment of separation, that's all it took. They continued to the campsite, fully expecting him to catch up. He was a well-equipped hiker, dressed distinctively in a red and white striped tank top and carrying a blue backpack. But the next morning, he was gone. The subsequent search of 20 square miles, both air and ground, found nothing. I mean literally nothing. The Madera County Sheriff's Sergeant said it perfectly. No signs, evidence, or any of his gear has been found. It's unusual for nothing to be found. This isn't a case of a hiker falling or getting lost. Those events leave something behind. A dropped hat, a torn piece of fabric, a misplaced track. Ronald Tomlinson wasn't lost. He was simply removed, as if a section of the Ansel Adams Wilderness briefly lifted, separating him entirely from our dimensional plane, and then settled back into place without a ripple. From the harsh mountains, we move to the lush, volcanic energy of Hawaii for the case of Simon Owen, 21, in 1994. Simon was a fit, capable college student and a keen outdoorsman, spending his summer working and exploring the islands. He loved to climb and hike. He was last seen on June 29th, and days later, the only clue was his bicycle, found chained to a tree at the base of Manoa Falls, securely locked, a clear sign he intended to return to it. The official theory relies on a climbing accident. But despite a massive search aided financially by people like billionaire Ross Perot, they never found a single trace of his body or gear. Manoa Falls, like many large waterfalls, is an area of intense natural energy, water flow, geological stress, and volcanic heat. All factors that could contribute to dimensional instability. Why lock the bicycle if he intended to disappear? I believe Simon reached a point of high energetic anomaly, perhaps drawn by the powerful forces of the waterfall, and was simply extracted from the physical world. The locked bicycle is the final, frustrating contradiction. The expectation of a return that never happened because the world itself broke its promise to keep him. The disappearance of Michael Hugh Cametti, 56, a retired Army colonel, in 2011, highlights the failure of training against the power of the unknown. Colonel Cametti possessed immense survival and outdoor skills. He left behind a handwritten note in his car, detailing his precise hiking plan in the Cranberry Wilderness, a 5-day trek. A search of the north-south trail was immediately conducted once his car was found. Scent dogs, specialized crews, and volunteers scoured the area and found zero evidence. When a man trained to survive hostile conditions, a man who leaves a detailed itinerary, vanishes without a struggle, a sign, or a body, we must rule out the conventional. If a skilled mountaineer like Cametti were injured, he would have known how to signal for help or leave a marker. His complete erasure from the trail is simply not consistent with a natural event. The Cranberry Wilderness absorbed a trained operator. Did he follow his planned route into a localized gravitational or energetic disturbance? He walked onto that trail with a plan, but the trail led him to a destination beyond the reach of his military training. Harold Loris Drake, 76, a retired math teacher in excellent physical shape, vanished from Pfeiffer Big Sur State Park in 2015. He was only going for an afternoon hike with a friend, took only water and snacks, leaving all his camping gear and his sleeping bag behind, The expectation of a quick return was high. The 1,000-acre park was searched, a manageable area for a detailed sweep, and yet authorities found no sign of him. No glasses, no boot marks, nothing. This is another case of a short excursion resulting in absolute vanishing. No massive distance traveled. No deep, remote cave system to hide a body. Just a man stepping off the path. Big Sur is a place of dramatic geological forces and coastal energy. Did he unknowingly wander into one of those strange, temporary energetic pockets, a zone of dimensional friction that seems to target people on brief, ill-equipped excursions? The theory of getting lost or injured is weak here. The terrain may be unforgiving, but the missing piece is the evidence. Harold Loris Drake simply dissolved into the landscape. Our final case for this volume is both a natural disaster and a profound mystery. The vanishing of Vietnam veteran Richard Harville in the Mojave Desert during a flash flood in 2015. Richard was camping near the Tehachapi Mountains. A sudden, violent flash flood hit the area at 10 p.m. His friend witnessed the event. Richard was struck by a rock and swept away by the current. The friend saw him go under the current. The event was observed, logged, and understood as a tragic drowning. But the body was never recovered. This is the ultimate contradiction. If a body is caught in a flood, it will travel, it will be battered, but it will eventually be deposited and found, even if miles away. Massive search teams found nothing. The sheer violent energy of a massive flash flood tearing through the desert, a sudden immense displacement of earth and water could be enough to briefly destabilize the fabric of the area. Could the current have carried Richard not just downstream, but through a momentary rupture, a transient dimensional rift opened by the massive force of the disaster? Even his dog, the best tracker, sat near the trailer for 3 days, confused, because the trail simply vanished. 10 cases, 10 profound absences, from the arid desert to the humid forests, to the energy points of Hawaii and the rugged mountains of Wyoming. We see a pattern that science refuses to fully embrace. A person steps away briefly, and the resulting vacuum of evidence is absolute. These wilderness areas, the parks, the remote edges of civilization, seem to be the flashpoints, where the rules of our known reality bend and occasionally break entirely. A short-lived, localized, dimensional rift could explain the most troubling elements of these cases: the instantaneous nature of the vanishings, the complete failure of recovery efforts, and the baffling end of the tracking trail. We must consider that these missing persons did not succumb to nature or simple crime, but to an unknown natural force that has the power to erase human presence completely. What do you think, friends? Are we looking at a pattern of human tragedies, or are we truly tracking something beyond unknown? We'd love to hear your opinions on these cases in the comments below, but please keep it friendly and respectful. Until we meet again, be good to yourselves and each other. Stay safe out there. I'm David Paulides, and I'll talk to you next time on Beyond Unknown.